Welcome to this explainer. You know that feeling when you finally catch your breath, you think, okay, the worst is over, and then bam, life just throws another massive curveball right at your head. Well, that universal experience is exactly what we're going to be exploring today. We're diving into a fascinating ancient text that captures the dramatic, swinging emotional pendulum of King Yudhishthira. It's essentially an ancient masterclass in how to deal with adversity, the complete unpredictability of fate, and the very real limits of human control. Yield not to grief. It behoveth thee not, O great king, to pine under calamity. This powerful piece of advice from the sage Vrihadaswa is kind of the anchor for our whole explainer today. He's not just throwing out empty platitudes here. He is speaking directly to a king, Yudhishthira, who is currently living in exile in a mighty forest, totally stripped of his kingdom and wrestling with some incredibly deep sorrow. The sage's directive to just not yield to grief is a great thought, right? But how exactly do you pull that off when literally everything has gone wrong? Let's see how the sage breaks it down in Section 1, King Nala's Triumphant Return. To actually help the king, the sage kicks things off with the ultimate comeback story, the history of King Nala. And this isn't just some random tale he pulled out of thin air, it is a very specific, deliberate parallel to Yudhishthira's own life. See, Nala had also fallen into terrible distress, and the cause? Yep, a game of dice. He lost his entire kingdom, was separated from his wife Damayanti, and faced just unimaginable hardships. But Vrihadaswa focuses on the aftermath. He paints this vivid picture of the triumphant return. He describes how Nala finally reunited with his wife, got his kingdom back, and passed his days in total joy, like the chief of the celestials. By highlighting this ultimate recovery, the sage is laying down a massive foundation of hope. He's basically telling Yudhishthira, look, bouncing back from absolute rock bottom is possible. It's happened before. Moving right along, that brings us to Section 2, Comfort in Times of Calamity. So here is the sage's core framework for surviving tremendous difficulty, brilliantly illustrated for us. King Nala suffered his dire woe completely and utterly alone out there in the wilderness. Now compare that to King Yudhishthira. The sage points out that Yudhishthira is enduring his exile, accompanied by his fiercely loyal brothers and Krishna. Plus, he's hanging out daily with wise Brahmanas. The logic here is incredibly grounding. The sage is looking at him and saying, yes, your situation is a nightmare, but look at your support system. You actually have far less cause for sorrow than Nala did. It's such a powerful reminder of the value of community and shared burden when we're going through our own darkest times. And get this, the comforting power of Nala's story doesn't just stop at a logical comparison. The text claims that the very act of reciting or even just listening to this history provides tangible, real-world benefits. Forget your modern self-help books for a second. This ancient text claims that just hearing this story acts as a direct cure for adversity. It destroys evil and the negative influence of Kali. It brings immense comfort. It's even said to crown all human purposes with success, granting fame, health, and joy. It's presented not just as a cool piece of history, but as an actual spiritual tool for building resilience. But here is the real psychological kicker. Men of self-possession never suffer themselves to be depressed. Recognizing the caprice, or the total unpredictability of destiny, and the fruitlessness of our own exertion should actually prevent us from grieving over sudden adversity. It is a profound shift in perspective, isn't it? If you truly understand that success and failure are largely out of your hands, subject to the random whims of fate, well, then it becomes totally illogical to let temporary prosperity inflate your ego, or let sudden adversity completely crush you. It's an ancient call for pure emotional equilibrium. Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, Mastering the Science of Dice. Okay, so despite all this amazing, profound wisdom, the king is still sweating over one very specific anxiety. Even with his heart fixed on virtue, he is terrified. He confesses his lingering fear to the sage. Someone skilled in dice will summon me. Remember, a rigged game of dice is literally what stripped him of his empire and forced him into the forest to begin with. The trauma of that loss is heavy. He feels utterly vulnerable, knowing that if a master of the game challenges him again, the code of honor means he'd have to accept, risking whatever little he even has left. And then, boom, we get this massive turning point. The sage Vrihadaswa addresses this specific vulnerability head-on. And he doesn't just offer more philosophy this time, he offers a practical, unbeatable tool. The sage announces that he actually knows the science of dice in its entirety, and he's going to teach it to the king. He says, take this lore, O son of Kunti. Just like that, he completely dispels Yudhishthira's deepest, darkest fear by turning his greatest weakness into an absolute strength. And obviously, the result is instant. The text tells us that Yudhishthira receives this dice lore with a glad heart. Equipped with this invincible knowledge, he is finally free from his most paralyzing anxiety. That emotional pendulum we talked about earlier, it has now swung all the way up to the absolute joyous peak. The king is comforted, empowered, and secure. Having delivered this ultimate gift, the sage departs to the sacred waters of Hyasirsha for a bath. So the crisis is perfectly resolved, right?
Well, not quite. Enter Section 4, Arjuna's fierce ascetic penance.
Yeah, reality crushes right back through the ceiling. Literally, as soon as the sage leaves, the peace is shattered. Travelers and ascetics arrive from the mountains and forests bringing some intense news about Yudhishthira's brother Arjuna. They report that Arjuna is out there engaging in fierce ascetic austerities that no one before him has ever even attempted. Just look at the staggering steps of this penance. First, he's living upon air, alone, no food. Second, he is maintaining a vow of perfect silence with a totally fixed mind. And third, he's out there capable of drawing his bow with his left hand, proving his martial readiness even while in the middle of this intense spiritual discipline.
The imagery the text uses here is just striking. It says that through these regulated vows, Arjuna appeared like the blazing god of justice himself in his embodied form. He is elevating his physical suffering to a divine, almost terrifying level. It's awe-inspiring, for sure. But imagine being a loving older brother and suddenly hearing about this extreme, self-inflicted suffering. It's deeply, deeply disturbing.
And that emotional whiplash brings us to Section 5, A Heart Burning in Grief. Talk about a 180! This jarring news causes the emotional pendulum to swing violently away from comfort and straight back down into deep sorrow. That glad heart Yudhishthira possessed just moments ago completely evaporates. Hearing of his dear brother Jaya, which is another name for Arjuna, engaged in such unimaginably harsh asceticism shatters the peace he just found. His glad heart transforms instantly into a heart burning in grief. The relentless nature of these trials forces the king right back to square one. Seeking consolation in the forest, he once again has to turn to the wise Brahmanas living with him to find some way to soothe his burning heart. The comfort he found from the sage was real, absolutely, but it was also temporary. Fate, destiny, and the actions of the people we love continually disrupt our equilibrium. It never really stops. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we are left sitting right there in the dirt with King Yudhishthira grappling with the unpredictable swings of life. We're left to ponder this really provocative question: when human exertion seems absolutely fruitless against the caprice of destiny, how do we keep our own hearts from burning in grief? Do we rely on the logic of comparing our situation to worse ones? Do we seek practical skills to overcome our specific fears? Or do we continually lean on the wisdom of our community? It's a profound challenge that this ancient text leaves us to answer in our own modern lives. Think on that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.